1975. The applause is thunder, the lights are blinding, and the hotel rooms look expensive in photographs. But open the ledger, and the numbers tell a different story. Queen are famous enough to be recognized at airports, and broke enough to argue over taxi receipts. Every studio day feels like a bet with money they don't have. Every meeting with the label feels like a polite warning. Keep it simple, keep it short, don't get strange. A sensible band would chase an easy chorus and a tidy runtime. A sensible band would color inside the lines, deliver a 3-minute sugar rush, smile for the cameras, and hope the bills stop piling up. Queen were never built for sensible. What they were about to deliver didn't have a chorus, didn't respect radio's stopwatch, and didn't care that executives were already sharpening their red pencils. It sounded reckless. It looked like career self-sabotage. It became the record that shut everyone up. If you want to know how a song goes from private obsession to public earthquake, start here, on the edge of collapse, with 4 musicians who decide that the most dangerous move is the only one worth making. Quick thing, if you're into fast, no-fluff music stories, hit subscribe. The next twist blindsided the label.
Is this the real life?
The myth says fame fixes everything. The reality says fame just makes the bills bigger. Queen had the momentum, singles on the air, posters on bedroom walls, queues around venues, and yet they were tripping over the fine print. Contracts were stiff, royalties thin, studio time priced like gold leaf. They'd learned the hard way that access doesn't equal control. Tour buses rolled, gear crews hustled, and the accountants still looked worried. That pressure doesn't just sit in the background. It leaks into how you play, how you talk, how you sleep. You begin to measure every decision against one brutal question. Will this keep the lights on? Now lay the industry rulebook alongside their problem. Radio lives on repetition and bite-size hooks. The dominant advice in every corridor of power is the same. Deliver something that can fit between 2 ad breaks without scaring the morning DJs. The band hears it from every angle, then quietly rejects it. Brian May is stockpiling riffs that deserve cathedral space. Roger Taylor is hearing drum patterns that can rattle an arena roof. John Deacon's bass is building foundations you could trust with your life. And Freddie Mercury, eyes glittering, mind racing, is already pointing beyond the map. He doesn't want comfortable applause. He wants a reaction you feel in your bones. It's a mad position to take when you're counting pennies. But here's the strange thing about creative brinkmanship. Once you've stepped onto the ledge, stepping back feels worse. The band decides that if they go down, they'll go down swinging at the biggest target they can see. No half measures, no trimming, no sanding off edges to fit someone else's picture frame. They are tired of sounding affordable. They want to sound inevitable. That choice loads the next months with voltage. Everything they do will be louder, brighter, more expensive than wisdom allows. The album they're starting is already rumored to be a monster. The single they aim to lead with is a riddle. And tucked inside the riddle is a gamble no one in a suit can endorse. Play it safe and survive, or risk everything and try to change the conversation. They choose the second thing, and they do it with a calm smile that says, "Watch." Some songs arrive fully formed. Others arrive like stubborn visitors, showing up at odd hours with half a sentence and refusing to leave. This one haunted late nights at a piano, followed Freddie from apartment to studio to hotel room, insisted on being more than a neat chorus wedged between verses. He had fragments, lines that stuck to the tongue, chord turns that tugged the room darker, nonsense syllables that weren't nonsense at all once you heard where they wanted to go. He scribbled them everywhere. Airline stationery, margins of notebooks, pages with crossed-out titles and arrows pointing at empty space labeled only with 2 words, "Opera here." It's a wild thing to bring to a band. A song with no conventional center asking to shapeshift in public. A ballad that breaks open into a courtroom of voices. A guitar statement that doesn't peak at the end, but in the middle, like a window flung wide in a storm. Even describing it makes you sound unwell. But ideas that don't behave are often the ones that last. Freddie shows the bones to the others, and something catches. Brian hears room for a solo that doesn't just decorate the song, but answers it. Roger hears the slam of toms that can stand beside a choir and not flinch. John hears where the ground needs to hold steady so everything above it can fly. There's hesitation. Of course there's hesitation. You don't walk into your label holding a 6-minute chimera and say, "Trust us," unless you've earned a mountain of faith. Even inside the band, even with years of shared risk, there's a moment where everyone silently asks, can this be built? And if it can be built, can it live? The answer, whispered at first and then stated loudly, is yes. Not because anyone has a guarantee, because they can hear the future version of this thing breathing. That's the secret of the early days. You proceed on the courage of what you imagine. You lean into a feeling before there's proof. You let the stubborn idea drive. The fragments become sketches. The sketches become plans. Freddie keeps the meanings close and the execution open. He isn't writing a jingle, he's writing an experience. That is either glorious or disastrous, and there's only one way to find out. So they go to work. Day 1, Wales. The tape rolls. The piano speaks softly like someone about to confess a secret. The rhythm section locks into something elastic, strong enough to carry weight, loose enough to allow sudden turns. Microphones bloom around the room like flowers. The first takes lay the path, the second takes refine it. The late night takes get weird in all the right ways. When the walls of Rockfield can't hold the plan any longer, the caravan heads back to London. New rooms, new air, new ghosts. Wherever there's a window of studio time, they slip in and push. The middle section becomes an engineering mountain. Vocals upon vocals. Harmonies multiplying until a single syllable sounds like a crowd. This isn't digital trickery. This is hours stacked on hours, take on top of take, bouncing and carefully rebouncing, guarding tone like a secret recipe. You can hear the patience in the result. Each Galileo, like a shard of light thrown from a rotating mirror. Each Figaro, landing exactly where the drama needs a grin. It's ridiculously ambitious, and somehow, when you listen, it feels obvious. Like, of course, a rock song should veer into mock opera before dropping into a hard rock detonation. Of course. Brian's guitar waits for its perfect entrance, then carves through the dense air with a voice of its own. Not noodles, statements, phrases that answer the choir fold into the song's logic, then leave space for the next swing of the pendulum. Roger's drums stop being a count and become punctuation. Periods, commas, exclamation points. John's bass never shouts, never steals attention, and yet the track would crumble without it. He is the steel in the skeleton. You'd expect the complexity to show seams. It doesn't. Edits vanish. Movements flow. The transitions feel less like genre jumps and more like one story told in different languages. The real trick is not the stacking, it's the belief. Every piece is performed like it matters because every piece does. And in the control room, there's a shared grin you can almost see. This should not be working, and yet, here we are. By the time the last background vowel is tucked in place, the song has the mass of a small planet. They stand back, exhausted and wired, and press play. The room changes temperature. The beginning still whispers, the middle still erupts, the ending still finds a way to forgive the chaos it just unleashed. Nobody says the word masterpiece. They don't need to. They just listen again, and again, and again. Now picture the meeting, a label office with a clock that ticks louder than any drum. The band sits, the executives sit, the speakers hum. 6 minutes float into a room built for 3. The first eyebrows climb at the balled-up rule sheet. No chorus, multiple moods, an operatic diversion that refuses to apologize for existing. The second eyebrows climb when the runtime passes the point where most singles are already fading out. The advice is immediate. Trim it. Lose the indulgent middle. Keep the ballad, keep the solo if you must, but cut the strange theater in between. We'll make a tidy radio edit. Everyone wins. Everyone does not win. Freddie doesn't blink. The band doesn't fold. The song is the length it needs to be. You don't carve the heart out of a living thing to make it fit the frame. If radio balks, let radio balk. That answer is not defiance for its own sake. It's protection. Some art breaks if you reshape it. This is one of those pieces. They leave the meeting with a polite no, which sounds small in conversation but lands like a hammer in a business built on compromise. Then a door opens from a side corridor. A friend with a mic hears the track and understands the joy of setting a bomb off in daytime radio. He is warned, with a wink, not to play it. He does what good mischief makers do. He teases it. Then he plays it. Then he plays it again. Phones light up. People who never call stations call stations. Record shops get asked for a single that doesn't technically exist yet. A rumor turns into a wave, the kind no label meeting can create on purpose. Suddenly, the conversation changes. It's no longer, will radio touch it? It's how fast can we get it pressed? When a city starts to hum a song before you've printed the sleeve, only a fool ignores it. The gatekeepers step aside, not because they were convinced in a boardroom, but because the crowd convinced them. And just like that, the song the industry didn't know where to shelve is headed to the shelves on its own terms. But that was just the opening act. What happened next shocked even the people who made it. Release day arrives with a prickle in the air. This is either the moment everyone calls daring or the moment everyone calls a mistake. The single goes out into a chart allergic to risk and climbs anyway. Not a weekend blip, not a novelty bounce. Week after week, it sits on top like it belongs there. Shops reorder. Kids memorize the quiet bits to sing at midnight and the loud bits to shout in cars. Skeptics retreat without speeches. Supporters act like they always believed. What changes isn't just the band's balance sheet, it's the industry's imagination. Radio discovers it can survive 6 minutes without a chorus, if the 6 minutes feel like a ride. Programmers who once gave notes about trimming discover their callers will listen through the whole thing just to reach that guitar flame in the middle. And in the shadow of this hit, another track on the album throws sparks, one that sounds like a very pointed letter to old business partners. The rumor mill spins, the lawyers consult, a settlement happens in rooms without cameras, and the music smiles because even the quiet drama feeds the myth. The audience doesn't parse the legal footnotes, they feel the rupture. A rule has been broken in public and the sky did not fall. Other bands take notes, you can sense, in the months after, an entire scene inhaling a little deeper. It's not that constraints vanish, it's that the walls feel further apart. That's what a cultural win does. It expands the room everyone is working in. There's a more intimate shift too. People begin to hang pieces of their own life on the song's lines. The early piano confession becomes a place to think about mistakes you don't know how to fix. The courtroom of voices becomes a theater where you put your guilt on trial and let the choir shout at it for a while. The guitar burst becomes a valve for frustration and relief, opened all the way. By the time the final words float into the dark, listeners feel lighter for reasons they can't neatly explain. That's not a hook, that's a spell. And still, another twist is coming. The kind that will prove a music video isn't just decoration, it's destiny. Television wants the band, but television does not want to wait. The obvious problem? How do you perform a song this layered on a show that expects a neat mime performance under hot lights? The obvious answer? You don't. You film a companion that can do the heavy lifting. Not a mini-movie with actors and plot, not a stitched-together tour montage. A clean, striking visual statement that is the song's face. They book a studio, point the lights like geometry, and play with mirrors until faces multiply. The now iconic diamond of profiles blooms out of darkness, mouths open on syllables the world will be quoting decades later. Guitars strike, frames tilt, a camera trick turns into a signature. It's fast, it's lean. It does not explain the song, it honors it. And for viewers who have only ever seen music as a band on a stage or a singer at a microphone, it's a jolt. Here's a clip that doesn't feel like a compromise. It feels like an upgrade. The effect is immediate. TV shows can host the band without dragging them into a room that shrinks the song. Fans can replay the feeling at home, rewind the kaleidoscope faces, stop on the shot that looks like 4 statues singing at the same time, watch the band slam into the rock section and feel the hair on their arms move. Stations across countries add the clip, not because they suddenly love art for art's sake, but because audiences do. A seed gets planted. If a visual can carry the power of a song across time zones and scheduling hassles, perhaps videos aren't side dishes. Perhaps they're part of the main course. Years later, entire networks will be built on that idea. But you don't need a future history lesson to feel what happened here. One bold clip taught millions to connect a sound to a look, and the look stuck. Ask people to picture the song. Most will see those 4 faces first. And still the story refuses to settle into a single era. This record will prove it can live more than one life. And the next one arrives under the heaviest sky imaginable. Great songs don't vanish, they go quiet and wait. Then something shifts in the world, and they flare again. In the early 1990s, news arrives that rearranges the gravity around the band. The public grieves. Tributes bloom. Radio turns almost instinctively to the song that always carried more than notes. It climbs the charts again, not as nostalgia, but as a collective ritual. People who were there the first time hold it differently now. People who missed the first wave meet it as if it were brand new. The track becomes a place to cry without explanations, to sing loud without saying everything outright, to honor an artist who poured theater and tenderness into the same breath. Then a year later, a tiny comedy flips a switch no one saw. 4 friends in a car, a cassette, a nod, and then that perfect beat where they all slam their heads like church bells. It is silly in the kind of way that proves love. It is joyful without needing permission. It tells every teenager in the audience, you're allowed to adore this epic thing, and you're allowed to adore it loudly. The effect is explosive. Sales spike. Charts shift. New listeners show up already knowing which lines to whisper and which to shout. The joke becomes an invitation, and the invitation becomes a second youth for a song that never really aged. The 21st century treats the track like a native. Streaming services reward replay, social feeds spit out endless reinterpretations, choir covers, bedroom solos, operatic parodies that are less parody than sincere homage. A biopic arrives and drags entire crowds back through the door. Comment sections fill with first-time hearing this, alongside, "My dad played this every Sunday morning," and somehow both are true. This is how a song moves from hit to folk art. Everyone feels they own a little piece of it. Meanwhile, awards and official honors stack up like stamps in a passport. Certifications change color. Lists crown and recrown. A registry dedicated to preserving culturally essential recordings pulls the master tape into the vault. A plaque arrives that only a handful of singles ever earn. The numbers are impressive, but the numbers aren't the point. The point is that every time the piano announces itself, a room goes quiet in the same way it always did. And a minute later, that same room explodes in the same place it always has. That kind of consistency across decades isn't a statistic, it's a phenomenon. And even that would be enough, but one more lens helps us see it. Tally the present tense. Count the views climbing on an old clip that refuses to feel old. Count the streams in a world where attention is scattered, and somehow 6 minutes without a chorus still captures it. Count the brand new fans, born long after the first release, who choose this song as the one they play for someone they care about. That's not survival, that's domination. When people ask why this track still wins, they expect a technical answer. The modulation here, the vowel blend there, the tape trick that lets a human choir sound superhuman. Those are satisfying explanations, and musicians will happily spend hours pointing at timestamps and smiling. But longevity doesn't come from math alone. It comes from something more difficult to quantify: the way mystery and emotion hold hands in public. The lyrics never sit still long enough to be pinned to a corkboard. On one listen, the story is a confession whispered to the only person you trust. On another, it's a grand theater piece where you play every part yourself: judge, jury, defendant, executioner, and finally the voice that says, "Let it go." The words are precise and slippery at the same time. They allow meaning to change with you. At 17, the drama feels like school hall catastrophe. At 30, it sounds like you arguing with your past. At 60, it reads like mercy. You don't get tired of a song that keeps meeting you where you are. Mystery works better with nerve. The band could have softened the edges, trimmed the audacity, given you a neater story. They didn't. That refusal becomes part of the thrill. You feel trusted as a listener. You are not handed a tidy moral. You are invited into a storm. The structure is brave enough to risk boredom and brilliant enough to avoid it. Just when your brain expects the next safe thing, the song turns the wheel. Just when you think the turn will throw you, the band catches you. That ride is addictive. Now flip the lens again and look at the cold records. The clip you can't stop replaying clears 1 billion views and keeps climbing. The track stands at ceremonies that exist to mark things we can't afford to forget. Industry bodies, austere and stingy with their highest honors, nod and hand over the heaviest plaque. Lists that make old fans suspicious and new fans curious put it in the top slots again and again. It is, by any modern measure, not just historically important, but currently unstoppable. One last note belongs here because craft matters. The producer in the chair during those unthinkable vocal stacks, the person who kept saying more, but do it carefully, helped turn a brilliant outline into an immortal object. The longevity of the work doubles as a thank you note to the invisible hours of that job. You can hear the obsession when the choir lands perfectly on Insibilant, when the guitars answer precisely, when the drum fill opens exactly enough space and not a hair more. That's what makes the song feel inevitable. You don't notice the engineering. You only notice how your chest feels. That's why new generations keep walking in without needing a docent. The first piano line is a door that opens easily. Everything after is a house with more rooms than you expected. And when you leave, you carry one thing home: permission. Permission to be ambitious. Permission to sound like yourself even when yourself doesn't fit the form. Permission to risk being ridiculous in the pursuit of being unforgettable. Strip away the glitter and the gossip and look at the decisions. A band low on cash decides the next record will be the most extravagant of their lives. A singer with theater in his bloodstream insists on a single that behaves like a suite. A label says, "Make it shorter," and the band answers, "Make the audience bigger." A cheeky radio friend opens a lane that was never on the map. Listeners hear something they didn't know they needed and defend it with their wallets and their phones and their voices. That isn't luck. That's courage paid in full. The song didn't just rescue a career, it rewired expectations. It told every ambitious kid with a piano and a wild idea that the rules are guidelines at best. It told the industry that the public will sit still for 6 minutes if the 6 minutes refuse to sit still. It proved that mystery and showmanship can bear the same weight, that grief and laughter can live in the same track, and both feel true. So, which moment still tilts the room for you? The first half-whispered confession, the lightning strike choir, the guitar slicing clean through the middle, or that last line floating into the dark like a secret you're finally ready to say out loud? Tell me. And if you want more stories about records that took the scariest possible route and arrived somewhere no one predicted, you know what to do next. Hit subscribe, bring a friend, and let's keep chasing the songs that refuse to behave.